Welcome to SEPSA Talk. I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of SEPSA Talk. SEPSA is Center for Better Society Advocacy and Research Africa. SEPSA Africa is a non-profit organization that believes in a better society for all. We in SEPSA Africa believe that a better society begins with you and I. Hashtag, a better society begins with me. For more information, please log on to www.sepsaafrica.org. Please follow us on various social media platforms: YouTube, SEPSA Talk, Facebook at SEPSA Africa, Twitter at SEPSA Africa, and Instagram, SEPSA Africa. As always, today we bring you another very interesting discussion. And I can assure you that do not go away. You would be informed and you would be educated. Today we talk about religion and development in Africa. In Africa, most people engage in somewhat a religious activity from time to time. Despite its neglect in the development discourse, religion plays a key role in economic and social development processes. In most African societies, religious beliefs significantly influence institutions that govern relationships between individuals or groups, and hence either hinder or promote sustainable development. In this episode, we unpack what conditions of religion affects development positively or negatively, and answer the question of how religion can be used to promote a better society in Africa, given its growing force in development. And to help us deal with this important issue are Professor Enoch Opoku Entry. He's obviously not new to SEPSA Talk. He's an associate professor of leadership and management at Viterbo University, La Crosse, Wisconsin. He's a leadership consultant, an author, and civic educationist. He holds a PhD in business organizational leadership from the Indiana Wesleyan University, Indiana, USA. He holds MSc in business organizational leadership from the Mount St. Joseph University, Cincinnati, Ohio, USA. And he holds a BEd in psychology from the University of Cape Coast. It's always a pleasure to host you, Prof. Welcome once again to SEPSA Talk.
Thank you very much, Evans. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And our next guest, I'm also excited to have him for the first time on SEPSA Talk, is Mr. Michael Wanduzim. He holds a Doctor of Theology in New Testament at the Faculty of Theology, University of Göttingen, Germany. He has Master of Arts degree in Intercultural Theology from University of Göttingen, Germany. He also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Ghana, Legon. His research interest lies in gospel research, reception history of the New Testament in West Africa and Africa in general, New Testament ethics, especially Pauline ethics. Outside the academy, he's engaged in church work, currently taking care of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, Göttingen, and he is the he holds a preaching post of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana. He recently also defended his doctoral thesis, and we are so excited to host you. Welcome to SEPSA Talk, Mr. Michael Wanduzim.
Thank you very much, Evans, for having me.
It's a pleasure. And then our final guest for today, who is also new, but not new to SEPSA, is Haruna Gado Yakubu. He's an animal nutritionist and feed safety engineer. He's a research fellow at SEPSA Africa, research assistant at the Near Infrared Spectroscopy Laboratory at the Kapsova University, Hungary. He's currently a PhD student in animal science at the Doctoral School of Animal Science, Kapsova University, Hungary. He holds an MSc in Animal Nutrition and Feed Safety Engineering from the same university, Kapsova University, Hungary. He holds a BSc in Agriculture from the University of Cape Coast. His expertise includes animal nutrition, feed safety, and rapid analytical technologies. Mr. Yakubu, welcome to SEPSA Talk.
Thank you, Evans, for having me. And it's a pleasure to share the platform with two great intellectuals.
Thank you very much. It's also a pleasure of having you, Mr. Yakubu. And so, gentlemen, let me welcome you once again to this edition of SEPSA Talk. And I must say that we are grateful for your time today as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll start straight away. And as we read in the synopsis already, we want to see how religion in itself, either hinders or, if you like, promotes development in Africa. And I would like to start with you, Mr. Wanduzim. What do we know about the current state of religion in Africa, and what role does it play in development policy? We know it's often said that the African continent is a religious continent. And so the question we ask you is, what do we know when it comes to religion in Africa, and how does it influence development policy? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evans. And I think that when we talk about religion in Africa, it's something that is, on the one hand, it appears simple, on the other hand, it's a complex topic to deal with. But I start with, a statistic information, and that is, if we look at current data available, at least from the Pew Research Center, we realize that North of Africa and East of Africa is largely dominated by Islam, and the western part of Africa to the southern part is largely dominated by Christianity. But these two religions, being the major religions in the continent, aren't really the first to introduce religion in the continent. Before the advent of Islam and Christianity, if I should put it that way, the grandfathers and grandmothers of present-day Africans had something that they relied on that connected them to the world of the unseen, or the world beyond what they could ordinarily see, and that is the belief in the supernatural. So even though currently Islam and Christianity dominate Africa, as I've given the geographical share of these two religions, the truth is that religion from, if you like, let me just put it broadly, from the beginning, whichever beginning that maybe, could be something that we could clarify at another time, but in the typical traditional African person has within his or her DNA a strong belief in the supernatural. And that belief, if you like, forms the basis, on which the rest of his or her activities are built on. So for instance, we have the literature acknowledges, for instance, that it is easy for religion in Africa to be resort to for purposes of economics and for purposes of other socio-economic activities. So before even in present times, in such cultures, such festivals still exist. There were festivals that were celebrated, for instance, before the farming season. And if you look at the festivals and the practices that went into it, they were more religious, and such festivals were, supposed to invoke the blessings of the gods, the blessings of the ancestors for the farming season. The farming aspect is an economic activity. So we see that from the roots already, there's a connection between religion and economic activity in Africa, And at the same time, we also realize that not only is it found in the area of economics, it's also found in the area of politics, that is leadership. We realize that, the chieftaincy in Africa, at least I speak much, much of my data and my knowledge base is from Ghana. And so you realize that chieftaincy in Africa is intertwined with religious beliefs and religious system. And that is very important to note. And you realize that the king or the chief is somebody who is thought of as a mediator between the world of the ancestors and the gods and his people. So even as you realize that from this submission, religion is something that actually sits deep into the African life. And in present times, whether in Islam or in Christianity, they believe in the supernatural and what the supernatural can actually do for the African in his or her socioeconomic, life and activities is something that is expressed also in Christianity. It's something that is also expressed in Islam, So the advent of these two other religions that have actually taken much of the population of Africa hasn't, replaced dramatically anything about the African idea of what it means to be religious, which is, relying on the supernatural for one's daily life, whether economic or political life. And maybe I should end that question on your question by stating that two important things in our field, we talk about religion in Africa meeting socioeconomic ends, which I have stated. And then the other aspect is that religion also meets soteriological end. That is like religion is sought to kind of like combat forces that are thought to be inimical to the African, and that is what we call the soteriological ends. And so people resort to religion in times of sickness. They resort to religion in time when they feel that their lives are threatened. So that is one aspect. And the other aspect, which of course is much in line with our topic for discussion, is the socioeconomic aspect, that they rely on, on religion for such activities. And because of this, if we realize, maybe the other aspect of your question had to do with how, religion, the role of religion in economic development and economic development policies. And I should say that if we think about, for instance, I know much about Christianity. I've done a little research on Islam too in Africa, but much of Christianity, you realize that if we take Ghana, for instance, the churches are industry players, key industry players in, for instance, education, in, for instance, health, in, for instance, agriculture. So I take, for instance, the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, which I am a member of. The Presbyterian Church of Ghana in Ghana, for instance, holds over 1,500 school units. That is a lot for one, religious body or denomination to, contribute to a country like Ghana. Not only that, it has like 4 hospitals. So we're talking about the area of health. It has other things through its agricultural development services. It contributes to agriculture. Now, if we look at this, already there's the indication that organized religion in the form of Christianity, and in this case, one denomination in Christianity, is a key player when we talk about development. And here, development, I'm not only thinking about the modern definition of development in terms of progress, but I'm also thinking about postmodern, understanding of development in terms of human development. Human-centered development. And if you look at that, development in that way, you realize that education is key. So if you find, a religious denomination or a religious body like maybe the PCG, contributing in that wise, then you realize that, that is significant. Now, I remember recently, it was last year or so, when Ghana was introducing the new education policy, there was a lot of discussion about how there is a need to engage, to do broader consultation of, with stakeholders. And part of it was to engage the religious bodies who actually, are key industry players in education. And I think the President of Ghana held a symposium where in which I think the Deputy Minister of Education made a presentation. And I think the discussion went in such a way that the understanding I got from it was that the church wasn't consulted enough, in trying to roll out the policy. But I'm making reference to that to indicate that, there is already the recognition that religious bodies are important when it comes to development policies in particular areas, and it is difficult, especially in Ghana, to go around, to sidestep some religious bodies when you want to, introduce some key development policies. But Evans, maybe if I should end on this note, it's at the same time, maybe we'll come there, but at the same time, start to see the other side of religion, and what religious activity have contributed to the area of development. And even though I have painted a picture that seems to say, like religion in Africa, using Ghana as an example, is one that has actually, organized religion, I should state, one that has actually provided much for the country and has done well, and it's all positive. But I guess as the discussion continues, we also have the opportunity to point out other aspects that needs to be discussed, that need to be interrogated. But based on what you have asked, I think this is what I can say. And if there are needs for follow-up questions that would require more information to be given, please, that can also be done.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Michael. And I must start by thanking you already for your wonderful contribution. We will definitely come to the other panelists. Will tackle how it has helped to stimulate or otherwise, hindered the development. But just a quick one. You made a very interesting point here that, of course, if you pick the typical African, he or she has a belief in his or her DNA, and you say that religion is normally expressed in our development policies or our development processes. So the question I want to ask is that, so we should not be surprised if, people express their religion in the development processes if things are going wrong, because you often hear others who are not necessarily that they are not believers, but even you hear believers themselves saying, we should fix this. This is not religion. But at least you've made a point that it's always expressed in development. But why do we get that reaction when we want to express it in our development processes if things are not going well?
If I got your question right, you mean expression of.
Yeah, as you said, religion is often expressed in our development processes, but sometimes people get surprised when we get there, when maybe a country is not doing well in terms of its economic indicators, and then you hear religious leaders, expressing their faith or trying to use religion in a way to address some of the problem. You often hear a lot of expressions that go contrary to that. People get surprised. Why are we doing that instead of us facing the problem? And I'm saying, why do you think people often have that kind of negative reaction to religion if it's being expressed in our development process?
Yeah, I think we have to recognize one thing, and that is, in as much as I have indicated that religion is very much at the heart of the life of the African, there's also the reality that increasingly some Africans are, putting aside the belief in the supernatural. The idea that, okay, there is this unseen being or this supreme being also. So like in the direction of being atheists, a number of Africans, I was checking the statistics from the Ghana Statistical Service, and the last time, the population census was conducted, that was 2010. We had a number of Ghanaians who declared themselves as non-aligned or not having a religion, for instance. So there is skepticism in some way, among some people when it comes to religion, even though the Africans and their fathers and mothers and possibly family that they come from might still hold dearly to religion, or I mean, they have belief in, you know, the supernatural and the ability of the supernatural to influence things positively in the natural. They, for whatever reason, some are due to exposure to Western culture and other things, have shifted away from this. And some too have thought about how, I mean, maybe we'll talk about it, how the face of religion these days, especially Christianity back home, it creates a lot of disappointment. Not, I mean, you hear some of the incidents there, I mean, they are not things that really contribute to development. For instance, if we have belief systems that don't encourage people, let's say, to donate blood, or let's say that keep, what do you call it, that consign a group of people with particular physical expressions as witches and therefore deserve to be put in a camp. I mean, when people observe these aspects of so-called religious belief that produce such social phenomena and social actions in society, then they become very wary, or they become really suspicious about the role of religion in development. But that said, I should say that it is important for us, especially if I take Ghana for instance, it's important for us to be emphatic on this, yeah, that organized religion in Ghana has a lot of stake in the development of the country. That one we cannot negotiate on it. And because of that, there is always the need for development policies to be designed with engagement, or through engagement with representatives of organized religion in Ghana. Yeah. You can't, for instance, introduce an education policy in Ghana without consulting the churches and the Islam. I mean, the Muslim community has a number of educational units in Ghana as well.
True.
You know, and that noted, it is also important to also realize that, yeah, as much as there are people who object to, you know, invoking religion in development discourse, there is the fact that underlying majority of, people in Ghana, and if I dare say to risk generalization in sub-Saharan Africa, they believe that, you know, whatever comes to us has to be, you know, seen through the prism of religion. So, like, let's say using contraceptive, for instance. I mean, what does my faith say about it? You know, what does my pastor say about, you know, engaging in politics? You know, and so people kind of, through their faith and their religious belief, accept or oppose new inventions, mitigating strategies, you know, and so that is still there, and that needs, you know, to be recognized, and that needs, you know, to be engaged whenever, development policies have to be, you know, crafted and has to be rolled out.
Thank you very much. And I like how you ended by saying that we need to recognize that organized religion or organized religious bodies indeed have a stake in our development processes. And I know we'll come to that when we get to the second round to tackle how do we bring, you know, religion into our development processes effectively. Thank you very much, Michael. I come to you, Haruna, and I think it's been made quite emphatic here. Religion indeed plays a major role in our development processes. But there are always two sides to the coin, as people always say. And we know that there are people who believe that the current, you know, religion that we practice in Africa may or might have influenced our development processes positively. And the question I ask you is that what conditions of religion do you think might have stimulated or promoted development in Africa?
Thank you, Evans, once again for having me. Evans, if you look clearly at the onset of even Marxism in Western world, there is no doubt that religion influenced the development of individuals, society, and nations. Many of you might have come across or are familiar with Max Weber's book, The Protestant Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism, in which he propounded that the Protestant faith was one of the major elective affinities that led to the rise in market-driven capitalism in Europe. It was in that vein that Karl Marx also came up with his popular phrase that religion is the opium of the masses. Karl Marx believed that it's the understanding of the people, their culture, that will influence how they think, the economic status, the social status, and the interest they have in religion that will shape the teaching and its practice. So if you look at the onset of even capitalism in Europe and Marxism, you realize that clearly development policy was greatly looked at in a holistic manner, considering some factors that a religion may bring on board. Even the primary goal of human development is to improve well-being for all, especially for the poor, although views may differ on how we get to this point. So that's why even in the religious practice, we have different faith-based organizations. They may belong to the same religion, but they form faith-based organizations to implement their agenda, just to bring development to their people. So it is interesting to note that today, many secular organizations and governments involved in humanitarian and development work recognize the importance of religion. So religious organizations play a significant role in society, either locally, internationally, or when you look at the global picture. So religion shapes the attitude and values of individual society in terms of their behavior. So basically, there are some factors that we look at that may influence the development agenda. So in development studies and policy, there are three expectations that we expect religion to play. It is seen to be a form of social identity. So when you have a group of people, as my earlier colleague mentioned, Dr. Michael, when people feel belong, so an average African, when you pick an average African, as he said, is having an inherent belief in a supernatural human being. So forming or belonging to a specific faith allows that person to identify himself with a particular group, such that the development of that individual himself is greatly linked to the beliefs and practice of that particular religion. And again, another factor that development studies and policy consider religion to play is a source of social welfare. He clearly also mentioned about something like the Presbyterian Church being involved in education and other health issues. So when people get themselves identified with this religion, then they expect some form of social welfare protection if in the long run there are issues with their development. Again, a source of value and authority. Even we cannot run away from the fact that religion basically forms source of values and authority. They hold a high authority in our country, whether a secular state or a religious state. What people normally listen to will be what their pastors or their imams will say. If you look at the global picture, for instance, when you go to the North Africa, as Michael mentioned earlier on, which is highly Islamic state, that's part of Africa, you see that their way of development, their policy of development always look at the picture towards the Sharia in most of the aspects, how it influences their way of life. When you come to secular states like Ghana, even though we said we are secular, but we know the current ruling of the Supreme Court when we want to go and have a cathedral for ourselves. They said, yes, we are secular, but we can't run away from the fact that we believe in God. So looking at this authority and values, even no matter how a nation is secular, religion has a role to play. So the key developmental factors of any country, for that matter, being the human resource capacity, is linked to the values of that society. And the values are incorporated to the faith or the religion that particular individual or the society believes in. So here, permits me to rephrase what Karl Marx said by adopting his definition to bring it to development. If religion, to him, is opium of the masses, I can also say that development, for that matter, is also a relative term, which can be an opium of the masses. So development, for that matter, to me, is relative. What we consider developed in this western part of the country, when you move down to Africa, then you look at some instances, even though we are not up to the standard of Europe, then we can say that we are also developing. So depending on what you want, the infrastructure, the policies that you want, we can, based on what the people want, the power is for the people, what the people think, the opium of the masses, that is what the religion will influence. I will now proceed to look at the specifics of religion, which when we practice or observe, we are likely to sustain development in Africa. So as I stated earlier on, as looking at the value and authority, the value that religious groups, faith-based organizations, the value they hold, the authority they hold, if they are able to incorporate what the teachings of their fundamental religions tell them, then in that case, the people or the individual will grow up with a certain direction of thought. We'll have people who will be honest in society. They will not have a system that will be created based on greed and cheating. And for that matter, whatever or wherever they find themselves in the working place, they try to implement these values that they have acquired growing up as a religious person. So religious leaders must work on the mind of humans, the human resources effectively by teaching them the tenets of their, whether hard work, honesty, selflessness, and most importantly, to eschew corruption, which is a bane on Africans' development. So when you look at the concept of religion that holds value, honesty, if all of us go to church on Sunday and others go to mosque on Friday and others worship their supernatural human being anywhere they find themselves, then why then should we lose the values of honesty, hard work as a human being on that continent? So if we really follow this factor of religion, then we can be assured of a facilitated development in Africa, the human resources. And the second point I would like to look at relating to the social welfare aspect is that most faith-based organizations have this way of making people feel belonged, such that when you have any problem around whether you or your family, they quickly mobilize, come together, and make you feel belonged. So when we create a society like that, then the popular saying that we all know, we care for each other's, like we are each other's keeper. So what your brother does will concern you. If he's going wrong, you tend to correct him. So when we have a society, as in Africa, where we have mostly extended family system and a very robust religious setting, then we can be assured that people will cater for what belongs to the society, such that even with our attitude of not having good for instance, when we have infrastructure development, we don't take good care of them. Maintenance culture is the problem. When we have systems like this from onset, teaching us to feel belong, teaching us to take care of each other and our properties, then we'll have that in place. So I would like to particularly emphasize the need to engage governments to collaborate with faith-based organizations in the area of, for instance, health sensitization. Now we are in the era of COVID-19.
If you don't mind, if I should interrupt a little bit, I'm sure we'll come to that. You're making very fantastic points, especially when we get to the second round, to see how we can use religion to promote development in Africa. But one of the things that you said, and which I want to follow up, is when you talked about some of the factors or the conditions that has contributed to promoting development, is the authority, the authority bit, the power or authority that religious organizations have. But I just want to ask this, and maybe to some extent juxtapose it with what Michael also said, in the sense that there seem to be also a growing masses of atheists and people who no longer believe in it. And if I use Ghana as an example, these days, if the Peace Council, despite the authority that they have, even if they say something, there are a lot of people who no longer, but take them serious. People. So do you feel that this authority is still there? Because if it's a major condition which enables African development to really move forward, and we are losing that, do you feel that we are losing that? Because I get the sense that people no longer hold this power or authority that religious leaders have. What do you say to that?
You are right, Evans. It seems they are losing that power. But specifically speaking to the Peace Council, the Peace Council is a political establishment, even though it brought together religious or faith-based organizations. But you know our system of politics, when the opposition try to degenerate or look down upon any institution that is related to government of the day. The government of the day, the party in power, try to at all times protect state institutions. When they are in opposition, they behave differently. So the Peace Council is a political institution enshrined in the Constitution. So it's true that they hold a certain authority, but that authority is derived from the Constitution. And it's not derived basically because they belong to different faith-based organizations. For instance, if the chief imam should say something privately to his congregants, they will believe him. But the moment he gives that speech in the context of being part of the Peace Council, or the Presbyterian moderator, for instance, being part of the Peace Council, people try to look at it from the political angle and not from the religious side. So these people privately will accept what their leaders will say. But when they come together to issue a statement, then they look at it from the political angle. So basically, you are right, they seem to be losing the authority, but they are not losing the authority because the religious side of them is reducing. It's just a political agenda. That's what you can say.
Very well, thank you very much. I'm sure when we come to the second round, we'll hear more on, how to, make these religious organizations more powerful, and in order to help to promote the development that we enjoy. Thank you very much, Haruna. And I move to you, Prof. But before that, I think we have Albert, who is always monitoring this program and phoning in to ask questions as and when it arises. And we have Albert on the line. He has a question for you, Haruna. So before I come to you, Prof. Albert.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's great. Good to have you again. And so, yes, you said you had a question for Haruna. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. I think that was a fantastic delivery so far that is ongoing and we are monitoring. I just have a follow-up question based on Haruna's presentation. Haruna was more or less calling for religious or faith-based organizations to inculcate in their people values that could become tenet for building a better society. And some of the values that he actually enumerated are honesty, integrity, and other stuff. My question is that, do we actually need faith-based organizations to teach us or to imbibe in us this tenet before we'll be able to know them or practice them? That is my question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Albert. Mr. Albert, we can't dissociate the fact that growing up from the onset of child delivery, if you belong to a faith-based organization, a religious group, if you belong to any religious group, from your childbirth, your naming ceremony is being performed by these leaders. From your growth, everything you do, your socialization, more or less rely on your faith. So from the onset, they take part in your development, they take part in your growing up, they take part in your socialization. So though they may not be the people to ask you to do this before you do that, but if they started from the onset at your infancy, you grow up having that set of values inculcated in you. So you grow with them such that you will not find any difficulty to practice them in any way you find yourself as an adult. So you may not be part of any faith-based or a religious group, but even the 80s that we are talking about, people losing faith, they grow up to realize that, no, I shouldn't believe in God. But from the onset, at the infancy stage, they may not know their role, whether to believe in God or not. So they grow up with this religious group. And if they start from the onset at the infancy, I think it will be part of them and they'll grow with it.
Okay, thank you very much, Haruna, and thank you also, Albert. I don't know if for Albert's question, any of you would want to respond to it. Prof, you okay, if that's not the case, then I come to you, Prof, for your question. So yes, we've seen that there are certain conditions. I also would probably assume that some of the conditions would be the kind of values that religious organizations imbibe in people. It's a contributory factor to promoting development, like the honesty and integrity that we talked about. But we also know that, I mean, religion, as far as we know, also hinders or retards development in Africa. what are some of the conditions? And is it really even the case that religion retards or hinders development in Africa? Because Haruna seemed to, paint quite a good picture, I would say, to some extent. Prof, do we have such things? Do you think it's a bane in our development?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Evans. And I want to say thank you to all my earlier individuals, Michael and Haruna. You've done a great job. Religion was not supposed to hinder development, but unfortunately, that's the case that we find ourselves. I believe in unseen powers has been around for centuries. As far back as about 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Egyptians, the Scandinavians worship divinities. And we live in a world that seems to be getting smaller and smaller. So it will be very beneficial for us to know what other neighbors also believe in. And that is why faith is important. If you come to America where I stay, go to the Congress houses, go to the Supreme Court. What we use for our constitution all over the world is coming from the Bible or the Quran. So the laws of every land of this world is coming from religion. That is very, very important. Now, it's probably true to say that religion has produced a greater mass of literature, opinion, hate, strife, wars, persecution, absolute drama, and love than almost every other subject. Even so, from religion has come the glue that holds people together. And Haruna talked about belonging, sense of belonging. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basic thing we all look for is food, clothing, and shelter all your life. That is why, most African countries are languishing in poverty, and we don't move higher on that hierarchy. But once you meet the category of food, clothing, and shelter, the next thing you look for is security. And then the next thing is the sense of belonging, which is so hard before you go to self-actualization. People want to belong to. So now in this modern world, if you don't belong to a religious sect, then you don't belong anywhere. Even if you die, who's going to take care of you? That is why people find a way to belong to religious groups. But religion has produced mighty spiritual leaders and educators from whom the world has benefited immeasurably. And you can see that the leaders, spiritual leaders and teachers that have come from religion is amazing. Religion is also economics. That is the bottom line. Religion is economics. And what is economics? It's a science that studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means that have alternative uses. Religion is a science in that it is only through religion that we have many schools, religious institutions. We have farms, we have hospitals, we are stakeholders in governance and in politics. There are also places for advocacy for citizens to pay their taxes and contribute to civil responsibilities, cleanliness, all those places. It is also established that it's only in religious institutions that you can gather about 3,000 to 5,000 people to talk to at a time. So all politicians need religious institutions because that is where people congregate and you need to be there to talk to them. So of course, it is embedded and part and parcel of development. Now let's go to what hinders it, the question that you gave me. The business of religion is not to make profit. This is not to make profit. You are supposed to win souls for the next world. In fact, religious people do not belong to this world. We are all passing through. And talk about Muslims, Christianity, Hinduism, Taoism, all those religions. Next week I'll talk about that religion and leadership in Africa and what I do on my own. Religion is moving people towards the next world, what we call heaven or paradise. And all religious institutions will tell you that that is our ultimate goal. So the development of building cars and having cars and houses is not part of religion. If you are moving to the next world, then your treasure is in paradise, and you're not supposed to be thinking about this worldly things. But once we live in this, that is why Jesus Christ, his name is Jesus Christ. Christ is the anointed one. And his original name is Jesus of Nazareth. That is his original name. If you add him to Prophet Muhammad, all these people did not live a life of amassing wealth and developing themselves, but they left a life of emptiness so that others can be full. They thought, values. That is why their names are with us till now. So let me go back to the business. If you want to link development to religion, it's going to be a difficult task. But if you're talking about personal development, value development, leadership development, yes, then we're talking about issues here. And then character development, because character is everything in leadership. And we need our leaders to show character, especially in values. Now, where does it hinder development? The first one is people kill in the name of religion. We've seen wars between Christians and Muslims. Even now, suicide bombers will kill in the name of Allah, that others who don't believe in their prophet is an infidel, and that person should be killed. I don't think that is supposed to be the case. We know, even from Quran, I have a copy of the Quran, that Isa, which is Christ, was a prophet. But the last prophet was Prophet Muhammad. So if we are all believing in different prophets, why do I kill my brother because he believes in one prophet and I don't believe in the other prophet? And this retards development. So we should look at that. We just believe in different prophets, but it shouldn't pitch us against each other and fight and kill ourselves. The next one is when the gods, I'm talking about the little gods, because some believe in the little gods and then others believe in the bigger God, the creator of this universe that Christians call God and Muslims call Allah. Now, that God, when he's quiet in solving a problem and in difficult processes of living our lives, what do people do? It hinders development because people look for shortcuts to solve their problems. And that is why false prophets comes in. That's why false malams comes in, and then they do people and take their money. Also, they believe that there are places beyond the land in which we live, makes others throw away their energy, prayers, and effort towards the next world instead of this world. Ethiopia is one of those countries, very poor, not because they don't have resources, but it is because they are religious. People can fast for 30 days. People can go to Achia Mountains for 30 days, some 3 months. Well, if you do that, you tie God's hands because he created you in his image. You're supposed to work. You know, there's dignity in work, but we tie God's hands. That is why with all the resources given to us, we come back to God and beg him, God, we need you to help us. White people can turn around Africa within 3 years. If we move all of them to Europe, and then if we move all Africans to Europe and we move all these whites to Africa, I can tell you within 3 years, they will turn around everything. All the resources that we need, the beautiful weather, the coast, the area land, the gold, the magnesium, and the bauxite, everything is in there. But in the midst of all these resources, we live in squalor and poverty. And it's because we are tying God's hands. Instead of putting our brains to work, we still go and pray to God to help us. It's just like sending your son to school. You pay the school fees and everything. And then when it's time for the son to take a test, your son calls you and says, Dad, can you come and take this test for me? What can a father do? So we need to look at that place that where religion had made some people lazy. And Muslims have a good tenet of giving alms. I like values from religion. They have a tenet of, giving alms to the poor. But some people intentionally pretend to be poor and collect alms when they are not sick. And that retards development. Then we have spiritual leaders that are preaching strange religion. We have strange religion that is also not helping us. people who are teaching their members to chew grass. Others are giving, all sort of directions and directives to people. These are strange in religion, and we should find a way to stop it. When we come to the next one, I will talk about the other issues. Thank you. Okay,
thank you very much, Prof, for the wonderful insights that you have given, and I'm happy that at least you mentioned one thing, which is also the next round of question, which is the fact that if you try to link religion to development in itself, it's a difficult task. I guess it's not impossible, because like your other co-panelists have already mentioned that indeed religion is very, very important for development. It's not also something we can necessarily separate, because I also believe that as it improves their leadership qualities, which you touched on, then to some extent, or to even a larger extent, they are also going to improve development processes. But I just wanted to ask a few of the conditions that you touched on, just to follow up the fact that you said something about people believing that, especially in the case of Africa, because there's a better place, which is what religion teaches us, they necessarily do not do a lot for development processes. But we know that where you live, for example, in the US, there are quite a lot of people who also believe in these things. They also pray a lot, but this is not the case for them. So why would you say it is because of these things, that's why Africa is not developing, whilst in US and other countries?
Your question is very clear. I am a Christian, and I go to church and I teach at a church. My church are all white. My family is the only black family, but I teach there. What I've seen in white people is that they wake up in the morning. No white person prays more than 5 minutes. God has given you the chance to call him Abba, Father. He is your father. So you wake up and thank him for giving you life, and then direct your path to him, that guide me this day. The whole day you have in your mind that God is with you. And then in the end, when you come home, you thank him for protecting you throughout the night. That's what they do. I also know a value I've learned in America. They have a family time. So every Saturday evening, the whole family will meet. And then they will talk about issues. Your kids will talk about that. You did this week that I didn't like. Mom, you did this. And then the parents will also tell their kids the values they want to. So they spend time with the family to listen to their kids, to bring contribution, to grow the family. So it's all about values. If you look at the way Republicans are set up, they espouse values. Democrats espouse policies. And that is why Democrats always lose these elections, because people go for values instead of policies. So values are very important. Now, when people are religious, it doesn't mean that you go and pray like 30 minutes, 1 hour on a pack. That's the problem of us. Whoever introduced religion to us have twisted our minds. If I'm your father, and my words say that before you open your, I knew what you were coming to ask me. And you talk commanding me as if you gave birth to me. People, pray commanding God as if God owns them. That's wrong. We don't understand religion. The creator is your father. So you go to your father, you ask, Dad, I need this. Can you please help me? Then you make the effort. He will help you. But if you keep praying and praying, job will never come when you keep praying for 30 days and fasting. The way we understand religion is our problem. Who introduced religion to us, the white people, that's not how they practice it. But we have practiced it to the extreme, as if all the witches are in Africa. But in America, the Wiccans are witches. It's a religion. The biggest number of witches in the world are Wiccans. They are all in America. But they use their extensive knowledge in the other world to build other things.
Interesting. One
of their rules is that if you hurt somebody, it will come back to you 5 times. That is one of the constitution of Wiccans, witches. We are even afraid of Wiccans to, witches in Africa, to the extent that we have a Beivonku. So my friends, that, we've used religion to inhibit our own development, because afraid of the devil, the monster, and the witches, to an extent that we cannot even. Now, all these politicians have pastors who are praying for them, and they pay them every month. How do you develop in such a way? We have our presidents whose ways of thinking are all coming from their pastors. Wherein lies your personal brain as a leader? So that is the problem. It's not for store development when you have to go to these pastors always for guidance when they don't even have thorough knowledge about development and economics and all these things. So let's look at it from that angle.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that also brings us to the second round, where we look at how religion can be used to promote development in Africa, because fundamentally we all agree here that it has a major role to play. And Prof already said that every nation in this world, their laws were made from, you know, religion, either the Bible or the Quran, as he cited. So I start with you again, Michael. And the question is, how, or should I put it, yes, how can religion be used to promote development in Africa? Because we know it plays a major role.
Thank you very much, Evans. And I mean, I really enjoyed listening to Haruna and Prof, I mean, in their submissions. And I think these are really important points made in there, I mean, in their submissions. And I just want to say something in relation to what Prof has said before I answer your question, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I think what Prof has said actually is significant in this way, and we should take note of it. You know, he's responding or addressing a particular trend of, I mean, in Christianity in Ghana and much of Africa, where people spend literally the entire working time praying, hoping that by the time they finish praying, God would have, you know, prepared some work somewhere. They'll go home and job employment contract will be waiting, will be in the post, you know, waiting for them to sign. And that is what Prof is reacting to. And I understand this very well. I understand the aspect of, I mean, what do you call it? People kind of feeling, I mean, through that, becoming lazy and not taking responsibility for their lives. I give you an example. When I was in Legon campus, I mean, I was part of a campus ministry, and I was a prayer secretary, basically, as somebody who is in charge of organizing people. I mean, the student religious group for prayers. And I know that in my time on Legon campus, there was a trend of, you know, people actually giving testimonies of missing an exam, and somehow it seems like an angel went and wrote the exam. So I mean, there were kind of, you know, testimonies of that sort, of people spending almost all the time praying and not reading, you know. And I took the view that actually God doesn't, I mean, I don't eat and sleep while God, you know, does the work for me. You get it? But I set myself to it, and then God does it through me. And that, I mean, that idea possibly saved me a lot. And I'm saying that because, you know, when we come to think about how religion can be, you know, if you like, positioned in a way that can help our development, then we need to, on the one hand, acknowledge what Prof has reacted to. And on the other hand, also, I mean, moving from there, saying that it's important that the teachings that people get about their, I mean, about particular religious practices in their various religions are accurate and, you know, well taught. I'm not sure. I mean, I am a student in New Testament studies, and I understand that, for instance, if we permit me to get a bit detailed, I mean, to go a little bit specific into my research area, and if we take the Christian Bible and you go the aspect of the New Testament, I mean, starting with Matthew, Mark, Luke. I mean, we have Luke, who basically, I mean, among his colleagues, the first two I have mentioned, Matthew and Mark. We have Luke, who actually gives us a picture and paints a picture of a prayer life of Jesus, of Nazareth, you know. And we have him talk about times that he spends a whole night praying. So it is not out of place when Christians spend much, I mean, at a particular time, spend, you know, a longer time in prayer. That is not out of place in the Christian faith, right? But we also realize that if we look at it in a larger narrative of the gospel, we don't find that Jesus of Nazareth spending all the time praying. You get it? And even it's interesting that Luke, for instance, the canonical author of this particular gospel in the Christian scripture, arranges Jesus's prayer sessions in such a way that whenever he finishes praying, a significant activity, he undertakes a significant activity. So we take for instance, before he selects his 12 disciples, he spends a whole night praying. So we realize that there's a connection, between prayer and work. And then if we put it in the context of New Testament faith, it looks as if prayer and faith belong constitutively together, because it's an expression of faith, that even though I am a steward of what has been given to me, but I'm still dependent on the Creator. So maybe that is the link, the missing link there, that people go to pray, spend all the productive hours praying, and afterwards they don't do anything. They expect that after praying, something miraculously should happen. I believe in miracles. I have my good colleague who is researching on miracles in African Christianity, that I got the opportunity to read his work, and it's really impressive what he's finding out. I believe in miracles, but the point is, if I'm limiting myself to the Christian faith, the Christian faith cherishes discipline and hard work. I'm a Presbyterian, and if there's anything, it is said that the Calvinists are very hardworking, so to say. It's a cherished ethic or value, So if we think about religion in helping development, then we have to think about calling for religious leaders to, as it were, maybe coming back to Harune's point, inculcate or give the proper teaching, sound doctrine. We call it sound doctrine, on major things that influence people's life. Because we have testimonies where people say, okay, I went to pray the entire time and an angel went and wrote the exam for me. If you allow that to continue for a while, the possibility that more and more people who want to toe that line, because the principle of utilitarianism is that people, they want to, escape. They use the road that would give them, the road of least resistance, that they can easily get something without, suffering much. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect that Prof mentioned, that I think we can reflect on it further in talking about religion and development in Africa, is the idea of the pie in heaven. Granted, the Christian faith and Islam talks about the paradise, talks about, the end of the age and the judgment afterwards, the new thing that will be ushered, But I think at the point in time, Christianity in Africa went in a way that thought, okay, we are the people that have been saved and we are headed towards heaven. We don't have to engage ourselves in anything that is happening in our community, in anything that is happening in politics. We don't have to even, politics was even thought of as, sacrilegious if a Christian were to participate in it. But it is important to recognize that we can't, with the majority, of Christians and Muslims in Ghana and other parts of Africa, we can't make any impact if we only consign ourselves to the church auditorium and the mosque, while whatever else, other people, rather decide things for us. It's important that if we want to have, make a correction here, there's a need for a reorientation. There's a need for a rethinking of the Christian practice of prayer, and to resituate the whole practice of prayer in a way that people understand that, yes, I need God to help me, but the help of God doesn't replace my agency. You get it? So that the help of God is actually, or the help of the Creator is actually, empowering me to be the agent who, does, who does the things. And that is important. So there should be, how do I put it? there should be, if you like, from the pulpit, there should be a new message or a new teaching on prayer that is for Christians. I mean, this is not something much. I mean, I'm assigned to be corrected, but it's not a phenomenon that is much observed in Islam. You know, the long hours of prayer and possibly spending productive hours in praying to the detriment of work and all that. I've not read that, and I've not observed or heard somebody criticizing that. So let me limit it to Christians. So there's a need for the pulpit to preach a new message or a different message, give a different teaching on this practice. You know, if it has been recognized, and we have to recognize and admit it, that it's one thing that really put a lot of people out of work instead of spending their productive hours in contributing their quota to development. And it also make people lazy, and it's something that Prof also mentioned in his submission, religion making people lazy. You know, everyone's here, we need to come home a little bit. You know, if we look at African traditional religions, at least within the Ghanaian context, we don't find primal religion, actually, I stand to be corrected on it, but based on what I have read and studied, we don't find religion making people lazy. When farming season is ensuing and religious performances are done, the farmers, our forefathers and mothers, didn't say, okay, now we have invoked the gods and the ancestors, so they will now go to the farm and do the work for us. But when they have done this and sought for a better rain, a good rains for the farming season, they set themselves to work. You know, so why is it that we have a situation where in our time, within, of course, in Christianity or Islam, people feel that they need to spend all the time and the divine will do the work for them. There is something would have definitely gone wrong somewhere. And I am advocating that we should recognize what has gone wrong. What is within Christianity, contemporary Christianity, that make people feel that it is the only way out is spend all the time praying and not do anything and expect that out of the blue something should happen. A friend of mine told me that even with the manna, the Israelites didn't have to open their mouth for God to rain it directly into their mouth. They had to go out and collect the daily portion for themselves. So the divine support doesn't replace human agency. Actually, the two work together to produce the desired result. So the aspect of religion making people lazy within the African context, I think it's a misappropriation of religion. And we should rather go back to the roots and understand that even before Christianity and Islam came to the beat, our ancestors, the understanding of religion was not that the invocation of the divine will replace their agency, but they invoke the divine so that in what they do, they would succeed. So we pray so that when we are doing the work that when we are contributing to our quota to national development, we believe that our prayers would have amplified our efforts in this case. So a new teaching on this particular religious practice and a new understanding that religion shouldn't be a place that people hold on to just to excuse their personal responsibilities. No, but it's actually something that should propel people, send people out to. And maybe my final submission would be that if we really want to give space to religion in Africa for it to contribute its quota to develop the much desired development that we need, be it human development and infrastructure development and other sense of development that we have. Two things. Number one, in my earlier submission, my first submission on religion and development, I made mention of organized religious institutions being key industry players. Okay, going forward, I think this should be given. Like sometimes when I think it should be given. Nobody should even tell policymakers that right from the word go. When you have an educational policy, when you have a policy towards health development, religious bodies should be part of it. Let them be part of it right from the word go, and let them own it. And you see, contemporary Christianity in Ghana, in Africa, with Pentecostal charismatic Christianity holding much of influence, has taught us that what the leaders say from the pulpit to the pew has much influence. So if you involve, religious leaders from the word go, and they buy into any development policy or any social intervention and communicate it to their, to their members,
Yes.
they would what? They would support it. And we always need societal support for any developmental intervention. You can't make any developmental intervention in the vacuum. That is number one. And number two, I think it is important that the way, expression of religion, expression of religion has taken place in our time. I think we should really look at it. Where Prof mentioned about where in the name of religion one kills the neighbor or something. I think we need to, in our religious, I take Ghana as an example, in our religious and moral education from the basic school, put in content that, emphasize the commonality or the things, the threads that bind religions together, and not emphasize more on what divide us. You get it? Islam and Christianity, which of course are the two that we should mention, have a lot in common. That when we emphasize that, these two religions and the adherents therein can come together to contribute a lot to Christianity, to national development. So we should look at interreligious dialogue. That is what I'm trying to say. Interreligious dialogue is very important. And I did my master research on Christian-Muslim relations in Ghana. So I think that is very important. So engage in terms of policy development, engage religious or the organized religious institutions from the word go. Let them be part of it. And number two, interreligious dialogue, interfaith relations are very, very important. If we really want to position religion in Africa in a way that will contribute its quota to the much desired development that we need in the continent.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. But I have Edmond on the line who would like to ask you a question. Then after that, I would also follow up with one. Edmond. Hello, Edmond.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. You had a question.
Yeah, so I have a question for Michael, and I've been following your submission from the beginning. And it appears to me that you might correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand what the evolution of religion as we have now, it has come to the point that we have the separation of the church and the state. And if you go to developed countries, you see this clearly, that we understand religion as a personal relationship to your God. And but what you are proposing here sounds to me like we should put religion back attached to the state and use religion as the intermediary. So you say if we want to implement policies, we need to appeal to religious heads so that they can also influence or change their people. Is that the way to go? That's my question.
Thank you for the question, Edmond. I think I recognize the aspect of state and church, or state and religion, the relationship between the two. If we take Africa, in the context of our discussion, Ghana, for instance, from the word go, state and religion were already separated. Ghana declares itself as a secular state, right? In principle, constitutionally. So we didn't have to come to the point that we had to do that separation, like for instance here in Germany, you understand, and other European countries. We didn't have to do that. So of course there are other African countries that are, that are either Islamic countries, they are, officially named so, and either Christian country officially named so. But if I use Ghana as an example, we didn't have to come to that place. But what I said, I'm not suggesting that religion should become, how do I put it? Religion should become the intermediary, so to say. But I am saying that taking into consideration the fact that organized religious institutions, so far as we have it, are key industry players in key sectors of our society, if we are introducing any development policy that targets any of these key industry areas that, any of the industry that these organized religious bodies are key industry players, we should engage them, also recognizing that they have, as we speak now, they have, a moral authority. They have a lot of influence on their members, you understand? And I think, you can't introduce any intervention in a vacuum. The social, the economic, the political, and other moods of the society have to be taken into consideration. And when I take the case in Ghana and other parts of Africa into consideration, it's not the case that religion is something that everybody has come to understand, that when I am a public servant, when I come to the public, I should not say that I'm a Christian or I should not profess. No, that's not what we find when we observe religion in Ghana, for instance. So once that is currently the case, and we need to push forward any development agenda, we should take that into consideration. It can be a social capital for us. It can be a catalyst for doing what we want to do. So I am not saying that religion should be brought to public life and become the intermediate through which political decisions are made, but that political decisions or development policies, when taken or during the making these policies, we need to involve key stakeholders. And one of the key stakeholders, indeed, is organized religious bodies. Yeah, I think that was the key question, right?
Edmond.
Because of course I missed one aspect.
Hello, Edmond. Edmond, are you still on the line? Okay, well, we will try and get him back. But I had just a quick one. I know you would have to leave us because of other duties, but just a quick one.
I'll be grateful if I'm relieved.
Yeah, this was said by Haruna Do when he talked about the fact that this teaching of values and instilling values into people is very important. Prof also touched on values as a key important, and then I wanted to ask you, because you bring in a lot of perspectives from the Christian religion, are we not already teaching people these great values? And if we are, that means it's not working, right? So what can we do differently? At least you brought in the perspective of the prayer point that Prof brought in, and you have given a suggestion that there's the need for the pulpit, to give a different teaching with regards to prayer and other things. But talking about values, I think we hear this all the time in schools, in churches. So what are they not doing right? Why is it not working? Or you think it's working?
Yeah, that's a good question. The difficulty in answering it is that I lack empirical data to prove that what maybe a particular church has preached over the years has produced this result in terms of character formation. But generally speaking, we should say this. If we take corruption, for instance, definitely something that I keep thinking about, that why would there be corruption, the level of corruption that we have in Ghana, when 90%, for instance, of the population are divided between Christianity and Islam, these two major religions, and their core beliefs, do not seem to provide space for this particular anomaly. So if I think about that, and I have been reflecting on what I have come to is that, yes, we have cases where the pulpits are doing their best, the mosques are doing their best, but of course, when you are a teacher and you do your best, you can't, no matter the case, you can't open the ear. You can't crack open the heads of your students and put the book inside. You trust that whatever the best you have given, they will emulate it. But that said, it is important that the religious leaders also emulate or embody what they teach. You know, so there shouldn't be a dichotomy between maybe like Jesus told his disciples to listen to the Pharisees and not practice what they are doing. So it shouldn't be the Pharisees of the day, so that like we find religious leaders, caught up in the same social vices that we are all struggling against, we are all pushing against, you know. So I don't have the data to prove that the teachings aren't producing results, but of course, once corruption is high, it's data enough to indicate that maybe something is not working somewhere. But that said, it's important that religious leaders do their part in terms of modeling what they preach for the pew to follow, modeling what they say in mosques, so that Muslims will follow. And on the other, moving away from there, I think that we should see values as things that don't just happen in one day.
Yeah,
it takes time to cultivate. You know, so somebody would, a rebuttal would be that, for instance, organized Christianity has been in Ghana for, since the 19th century. So isn't it, a lot of years enough for values that can combat corruption that we currently have to develop? Yeah, but I think...
Michael, let me help a little bit here. Just coming with thoughts that I have. There are studies by a guy called Lambert, Spirituality Inc., and then there's OA. These questions have been raised, and they talked about how spirituality have been private instead of public. And that is the reason why we're struggling in instilling values at the workplace. So somebody's a Muslim or a Christian, they go to church, they think that that's my private issue. And then when I come to the public square, I'm a different person. Unless we bring, that part of us out and make the world know that spirituality is public. Whatever you are taught at the mosque or at the church should be practiced at the public square, then we'll be struggling with these values. The other one is that people have been spoken to more from the pews than from the pulpit. And that means that the preachers have not been practical in the way they relate the two. It's not been hands-on. The Quran and the Bible is supposed to read us. Even though we read it, it's also supposed to read us, our character, and then show us the way. And linking the two have always been a problem. So I will encourage preachers, the imams and the pastors, to preach practically, because when somebody comes to give a testimony about what God has done for them, that practicality speaks to other people. Instead of always reading the Bible or reading the Quran and not relating it to present time, there's a disconnect.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Entry. Yeah, sure. So
thank
Michael,
you, Prof, for the reference to that literature and the data in there. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're all learning from each other.
Yes. So thank you very much. And yeah, Michael, thank you. Thank you very much. If you decide to leave us, you have our permission to do so. It's a pity that you have to leave, but we are grateful for having you on the show. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So before I come to Prof to continue from there as to how religion can be used to promote development in Africa, but I would like to hear from you, Haruna. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think Michael did very well, and the later parts, Prof also came in to collaborate with Michael. What I will have to add is that if you look at religion and science in Africa, there is a huge missing link. Development in this current world order is facilitated largely by science. For instance, when you look at the current era of COVID-19, and just the few months back, we've seen how the promotion of the 5G network brought about conspiracy theories. So in Africa largely, though it's around the world that religion and science from the onset have this missing link. If you look at Africa, it is so devastating. It's like that when the period of HIV and AIDS even came into play, convincing people to use protection, to to control this type of infection was a huge problem. I can vividly remember that Kofi Annan then has to move to Zimbabwe to convince Mugabe and people around the SADC and South Africa to accept these principles of prevention. And even when antiretroviral came, it was an issue. People think that no, HIV was spiritual, it's not science. How can a virus cause such disease? So the missing link between science and development and religion, science and religion, should be addressed hugely. Leaders of faith-based organization or organized religious group should look at educating their congregants to accept some basic tenets of science. I'm not saying science is always perfect. Science is having a limitation. So if we always want to exclude science from religion, then we'll have a huge problem. I can remember again when software developers and also social media developers like Facebook came, people thought, oh, Facebook is for the so-called Antichrist. But today we know Facebook was one of the major facilitators, facilitating social media platform that pastors and imams used to preach during this COVID-19 era. So if we find out the missing link and the authority that religion is holding to correct this missing link, I think we can facilitate development in the long run. So again, I will focus on the authority side, looking at the authority that religion is holding. It has led to the UN even inviting faith-based organizations in development of the sustainable development goals. In the fundamental development of the policy, implementation, the role of faith-based organizations cannot be excluded. So when we have faith-based organizations using the power of authority to let their people understand the basic tenets of technology and science and how they can be linked to development, and understanding that having the knowledge of science or technology doesn't mean that you don't believe in God or you are not a religious person, will help us. So I think I would like to end a point with this point, that before we come to the conclusions, that there is this aspect that faith-based organizations are exploring, and I'm happy. And I pray and hope that it intensifies more. Philanthropic work normally is left onto those who are rich. But over the years, we have seen that faith-based organizations have come out with huge philanthropic works. And I'm for here, I must say I was a beneficiary of the Catholic Relief Services food supply program at the Northern region when I was in the basic school. The CSR, that's the Catholic Relief Service, collaborated with World Food Program, and they started this feeding program that government came to adopt as a school feeding program. So I was a direct beneficiary. It prevented malnutrition. They used their power as a religious group to mobilize resources around the world to help governments to fight malnutrition. And I think it is helping in a large extent. So faith-based organizations and organized religious groups should know the power they are having, the authority they are having to help their people to understand these basic tenets. So I will end by saying finally that we should have a common understanding that religion and development have a tremendous influence on each other, and therefore acknowledge that both aim to enable and empower people so that we may have a life that is worth living and abundance grace, as religious people will say. We must identify how both religion and development can put people at the center. That's the most important point. Development and religion should put people at the center, and critically analyze, as we are doing, what hinders the development process. So that moving forward, we can have a system that upholds the rights of the poor and the oppressed. And I think that's exactly what we are doing today on SEPSA.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And I like what you touched on, the missing link between religion and science. And you think that we should try and, close this gap or this missing link. I mean, in just a sentence or two, what would you expect the religious leaders to be doing as far as closing this gap is concerned?
It's basically sharing information and research. We have people, the religious groups, we have people who have studied up to the doctoral level, like my friend who just left. They should be able to collaborate research. If he is part of the congregant, they should be able to convince his people to accept some part of science, such that when you have an email account or you have a Zoom account, if you have Facebook, doesn't mean you are worshiping the devil. These things can easily be, it is about indoctrination. When you indoctrinate people, I used to have problem with my colleagues 6 years back. When I log onto Facebook, they think that I will lose my faith. I'm going to see people, the 666, the Antichrist is coming. No, you should be able to convince people that there are positive aspects to science that you can use to facilitate religion. And we are seeing it. People are using megaphones. Now, to call azan in Islam, you don't need to use your voice loudly. You use a megaphone. It's technology and science. I'm not saying science is perfect. Science is having a black box, a place that we don't want to touch. But we should explore the good aspect to collaborate with religion so that moving forward, we can do that. So it's about sharing information and convincing.
All right. Thank you very much, Haruna. And Prof, I come to you with the same question. So how can religion be used to promote development in Africa? But in fact, you have already even started. And I like the point you said to buttress that of Michael, who just left us, that we should treat our spirituality as public and not private. But beyond that, what should we do to make sure that it helps in the African development better?
Thank you very much, James. And I want to thank Haruna for that wonderful contribution. I enjoy your keep it up, young man.
Thank you very much.
Those of us who are old, when we pass, we continue with a good way. Haruna is my brother. Let me start it from that preamble. And how can we invoke the brotherly bond that has been a disconnection in religion? The two biggest religions are Christianity and Muslim religion. In fact, out of the 7.7 billion population in the world, about 2.3 are Christians and about 2 billion are Muslims. So you can tell that very soon we're going to have a match between Muslims and Christians in the world. That Muslim, in fact, population are really growing. In America here, according to the research, everybody who comes out of jail tends to be a Muslim. And there should be a reason why that they are turning into. Maybe the Muslim faith is more embracing than the Christianity faith. We've had a lot of situations where people have seen that hypocrites. There's a lot of hypocrisy in some religions. So one time, about 5,000 or so years ago, there was a man who lived in Ur. Ur is now in Iraq. And his name, he had a son called Abraham. And they called Abraham to lead the line to where he would show him. We are all coming from the same father. Isaac are Christians. Ishmael are Muslims. So if I have a brother from another mother, why are we enemies? Because my brother believes in a different faith than I do. And that is what religion has done to us, that we are not developed. It has pitched one brother against the other, and we should invoke that kind of brotherly bond. Very, very important in solving the fundamentals of our problems. The next thing is that religion should become a magnificent obsession in open-mindedness. That is that religion has been closed-minded. This is what I believe in, and that is how it's supposed to be. Anytime I attend conferences, I tell my fellow professors that we are closed-minded. This is APA, this is how it should be cited, that is it. We don't have room for anything. That practically, the world doesn't revolve around that this is how things should be done. If you have kids, and you always tell them that this is my house, this is how things are supposed to be done all the time, you have problems. Because we don't live in a perfect world. So we should be open to allow our students even to dream in the classroom, instead of always telling them the fixed things that we want them to do. The other thing is that religion should bring joy to families and not pain. That is the only way we can develop. If I join a group and I want to belong, we have a situation where the rich are more recognized than the poor and the downtrodden. It doesn't bring joy when you belong to a group and because you don't have money or resources, others are more respected than you. Some people go to the church, after church, nobody even talks to them. They look at them in the eye and they pass. But the others who are rich and are resourceful and have knowledge, they will talk to them. I've had this situation, I've talked to some of my pastors. They come to preach and they'll mention my name all the time. And I tell them, no, don't put me on the spot. I'm just like any other person. I don't want to be known for anything that I am this or that. At the church or at the mosque, we are all the same. And our pastors and imams should preach that so that people will feel the sense of belonging to that. society. We should also, the contribution of religion to nation development is also low. It's a shame that government takes care of the poor than the church and then the mosque. You know, government is thinking about poverty interventions, and then the churches are piling money and thinking about their pastors alone when majority of the members are poor. Don't forget, the little money these people make, they pay to the churches. So if somebody need help and they go to the church for help, the church will say that we don't give loans at the church. If you cannot help me as a church, then where do I belong to? So we should look at that and begin to help ourselves. We should focus on helping those who need help instead of thinking about the church itself. There are many people in our communities who also need help, who don't even belong to our churches or our congregation. We should extend beyond that and then reach out to them. We should also teach values. We've already touched on this. And, values are very important. Timeliness, how we keep our time. God, the Allah, I'm talking about, the creator of this universe, did everything with time. And even when you finish, he gave us the gift of resting. He rested. So there's time to rest, yes. And there's also time to work. We should distinguish between the two. And then think about those values of timeliness, keeping our time. Cleanliness. Go to our cities. You know, go to our zongos, go to our cities, go to other places and see that whether we've done a good job in cleanliness. But we all know that cleanliness is next to godliness. If we want to be close to God, the creator, we need to be clean. So we have to look at that too. And then giving alms to the poor. I like that from the Muslim brothers. You need to give to other brothers. Else they're going to rob you. If people don't have a job, you know, we have a situation in Ghana and most parts of Africa. I was saying this on other platform that in America, we now have 14% unemployment rate, the highest since the Great Depression. So if America is 14%, which is over 50 million people are unemployed in America now, think about Africa that we don't already have jobs. So we see a situation where we can help the poor. Then we should also generate conversation of interdenominational nature. Yes, Sikhism is what separated, you know, one interesting thing about when I realized that even in a Muslim brotherhood, there are many divisions. I think about 43 now. And then in Christianity, we have over 4,200 different denominations. It's all about doctrines and people, how they interpret those things. We need to think about spending time with the other. You know, spend time, go to the mosque and spend time with the brothers to know how they worship. Muslim brothers come into a church to spend time with our brothers to see how they worship. It's just how they worship God through a prophet and the values they taught them. When we spend time with the other, it's going to help a lot to understand each other, because we have, you know, two brothers who stay in the same country, but we don't understand each other because we don't spend time with one another. And I think we should learn those. We should also be tolerant of each other's beliefs, which is very important. Very tolerant of each other's beliefs. The other thing is that, you know, most institutions are doing well: educational, health, counseling, psychiatric, farming institutions. These are important, and we should be supporting them. Innovation is also very important, that the churches should be open-minded and support innovation. One thing I like about the Muslim faith is also that they don't accept gambling. Gambling is not allowed. It helps people to be lazy. We should be picking some of the values from other faiths and bringing it to our own. One thing I know about language is that language grows. The Ghana people started with Anyeko, and the Akans picked it up, Ayiko. So language grows from one place to the other. And if we can pick good tenets from one religion to the other, that will help our society to develop. I think we'll find a long way to use religion to promote developments in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Our time is fast spent. And first, Albert has some reactions from Facebook, and I also wanted to ask a question, but I think Edmond has a question. He's trying to join us. I think later he will join us via phone to give a concluding remark. And his question to you, Prof, is that we know religion is very diverse, which you touched on already, with diverse beliefs which contradict sometimes you know, the beliefs of people. So how do we incorporate this diverse beliefs into development and the state without invoking conflicts? What about religious minorities if they feel a majority religious opinion is dominating? So how do we do that in order not to invoke conflicts as we try to incorporate religion into our development?
I think I touched about that the main two religions come from one grandparent, Abraham. So if you have a brother and he believes in something different from what you believe in, are we enemies then? That's not supposed to be. Religion is not faith. Faith is not knowledge. That is one thing I also want to bring out. Faith is not knowledge. So you're not supposed to debate on somebody's faith, because most people believe in something, but they cannot marshal enough argument to support a claim. And that is why for solving the conflict, we need to balance sentiment with reasoning and act with prudence. So it's a doctrine, and a doctrine everybody can interpret it in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Doctrines are like a president gives a speech and you have about 20, 30 reporters, but each one of them is going to report the same speech in a different way they understand. Our thought processes are different.
Yeah.
I want to begin to accept that, well, we all believe in God, the creator of this universe, but we believe in different prophets who led us to God. That should be okay.
Yeah.
Conflict would not necessarily happen.
Absolutely. I also felt that one of your submissions on being tolerant and spending time with each other is also a way to, avoid some of these conflicts if we realize that we are all from one parent. Before I come to you, Haruna and Prof, for your concluding remarks, Albert, you said we had some reactions from Facebook you would like to share so that we move on.
Okay, thank you so much. Haruna and Prof had exuded great submissions, great knowledge, and this is the way we build a better society. This is gospel. People should listen, and I think that if this message is drummed home into people's ears, be able to transform our society and to become a better society for all of us to call home. And we do not need to travel anywhere. We will stay at home and enjoy life. Thank you so much, Prof. and Haruna. I would like to read some of the comments that are happening on Facebook so that you can also provide some feedbacks for them and some responses to make it more interactive. The first question I asked on Facebook was that, how could religion be used as an agent of social transformation and societal development in Africa? #SepsaTalk. And one Epa Fimpo was saying that it is a very good question. Then another Unia Kofi Asamoah Mensah is saying there's a PhD Viva voice. Then Kwame Dakon is saying when people begin to come to awareness that the writings are not stories or history, but mind science or spiritual psychology, and begin to change their mindset of the esoteric and start accepting them from the point of esoteric meanings. Then he went ahead and said that it is time to work on the mindset of the masses. For now, for no matter how a man or a people desire to try to change, it can never be possible unless there is first a change in consciousness, mindset, or beliefs. And he's asking me, do you still think same as when you were in Ghana? That's it. Then we move on to the next question I asked. Religion, I made a statement that religion has been used to inhibit our own development, and that is one of our major bans in Africa, from what Professor Entry put. And these are some of the comments people are making. Kofi Owusu-Tewia, the Vice President of SEPSA Africa, Eric Owusu-Darlington, is asking, how do we right this wrong? The wrong based on the fact that religion has been used to inhibit our own development, and that's one of our major bans in Africa. Then Kwame Dakon is saying, it is not Satan, but the people's beliefs about Satan. It is not religion, but a wrong interpretation, understandings, and ignorance. There are more religions in the developed world than in Ghana. The difference is the interpretations and indoctrinations. Ache Fissel is saying, true, it's a tool for suppression and oppression. He went on and said that self-knowledge is the key or is the solution. Then El Arimiyao Wusama is saying religion is quite vague. Which one? Specificity is essential. Partisan politics has a proven track record of running down Ghana and Africa at large. France is religious and culturally Catholics. Iran is religious, culturally Islamic. These nations have a stable political atmosphere regardless of their religious denomination. Ghana and Africa must get our politics right. I told him that partisan politics is one among the banes. Constitution is also another. The system, the citizens therein, topmost of all this is leadership.
For the sake of time, if you can let us hear the last or two.
Yeah. Then he's saying that with your permission, AK Minister, I will encapsulate partisan politics, the poor political system, political misleadership as the product of rotten constitution, Sakawa fraudulent 1992 constitution of Ghana. I have realized a certain trend where political misleadership mounting a fierce campaign against some Christian denomination as top-notch reason for poor governance. No religion in Africa is binded to account to Africans, but the political misleadership owe the people accountability for management of the African resources. I find that succinct. Then Wizi Epe, he's saying almost like a taboo to talk about. Then Ken is saying very true. Moses Barima.
Okay. I think these are really reactions which we really appreciate from your followers, Albert.
Yeah, but
and that's
if you could allow me to just finish.
For the sake of our time, Edmond, we have Edmond on the line who has a concluding remark, and then we'll come to Haruna and Prof to conclude on that. I think it's nice. These are not really major questions. They are more of sentiments and also, I would say the opinions of people, which are very interesting, and we've had enough of that. But if you would love to also have a concluding remark before we hear from Edmond, this would be great.
Okay, so I will end by reading the last question from Osekujo. Okay. How do we interpret this to the layman? Lay not up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust corrupts, and where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves in heaven. So he has a very long comment. So how will you interpret this to the layman person? And if you could provide some responses to these questions, and it will make the people also very inclusive and participatory in the discussions that are ongoing. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much, Albert. This was very interesting. Edmond, do we have you on the line? You had a remark to make to conclude.
Yeah, I'm on the line. Thank you very much for giving me the platform again. I think we've come to understand that religion is very important in development. And truly so, historically, it has played a huge role in our civilization. Even its contribution to science is tremendous. But my problem is that it's starting to have a pernicious effect, especially in Africa, where, as we've pointed out, the interpretation has become a problem. And plus the fact that if you look at religion historically, it used to be homogeneous. So you had the Roman Catholic ruling most part of Europe. And if you go to the Arabic world, it was Islam. So under this, it was very easy to bring religion into development and rather easily. But if you look at a very secularized society where you have people, beliefs of all sorts, and some even not believing in anything, and we still want to hold or give the religion that role, I think that's where the problem comes in. Because the question I put to Prof is that how is it that it doesn't feel that the whole development discussion is dominated by the Christian-Muslim dichotomy, because it goes beyond that. So my personal opinion is that, yes, we have to consult religion and keep it as a key stakeholder. However, we should be really cautious in the way we try to bring religion into the fabric of development, because it can easily lead into invoking conflict. I give an example: the comprehensive sexual education that was to be rolled in Ghana. And if you argue from a very educative or education point of view, this was just a policy that we said we have to educate people about sex education. Of course, there might have been some inappropriate content in there, but the concept in itself wasn't that bad. But we saw it debated on religious lines, And at the end of the day, it didn't see the light. And I feel like moving forward, there are a lot of things, because trust me, many ideas out there conflict with what religion says. But we are leading a unitary nation, so diverse, and you can't even restrict people to a specific religion now. So it becomes difficult if we still want to give religion that role. Where do we put it? And how do we care for the others? Because if I'm a minority outside the Christian Muslim dichotomy, I have beliefs that contradict what the majority religious organization approve, then I always feel alienated because I don't feel like the country is hearing me. As you see in developing countries, yes, religion is very important, but important in the lives of the people, and we do consult it also, but it doesn't have this lead role in there. So that it's my comment that we should be really cautious the way we integrate it. It's not a religious state. Like you said, Ghana is a secular state, so as many African countries. So we need to be careful how we bring everyone on board without not invoking conflict, as we see in many cases.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And I come to you. I start with you, Haruna, first. What will be your concluding remark on this discussion, religion and development in Africa?
Great. Let me conclude by saying that we all have to agree that the missing link that I've earlier stated between science and religion is ingrained and must be addressed. Again, just concluding on a question that A.K. Mensah sent about how we use religion to, like in the form of social transformation of the individual. If you look at the concept of the epistemological concept of tabula rasa, people believe to be born without any idea or content of who God is. So if at that stage we are able to indoctrinate people to believe that there is something called heaven and that we should do good to go to heaven, at the same time we should be preaching about how to maintain this place called earth, how to have a social structure on earth that we will enjoy. It's not misplaced to enjoy earth and at the same time go to heaven to enjoy. So we should have that concept also being given to our young ones growing up, such that they will believe both making earth good and also going to heaven. That is my take on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful concluding remark there. And then Prof, come to you.
Thank you. The golden rule is simple and everybody understands it. Do unto others what you wish them do unto you. It means that you have to love your enemies and your friends as well. When we do that, there will be peace in our neighborhoods. Religious leaders are not supposed to be partisan in anything that they do. They can give advice to politicians, but if you allow politicians, especially African politicians who are already corrupted, they will manipulate your mind, and then you will pitch your church members or your mosque members against each other. I also think that now we have 52% of the world population being women, and religious institutions should begin to respect women and give them that role in society. It's very important because women can contribute a lot to our development. And we need to not stand in their way, but give them the chance to do that. Somebody asked a question, how do you right or wrong? I think that there's always the authentic message and there's always the fake or the ones. We should be careful about the counterfeit in doctrines, in both Christian, Judeo, traditional religion, and then Muslim religions. We all know that our forefathers, in seeking the light from the wrong truth, led to sin on this planet. So we should look for the right truth, and we know them by their fruits. Finally, we all have to go home one day. We will all die one day, but you don't have to go now. Wait a little bit and then make sure that you have an impact in the world. When we go, we're going to give account about our time, our talents, and our treasures. And we should make sure that we do right with our brothers here. We should make sure that we develop with the talent God gave us and our time and our treasure, so that at that time we can give a good account of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Entry, on that. And yes, so viewers, thank you once again for another time with us. We have discussed religion and development in Africa, and I'm sure you've heard it all. And I also like to conclude on what, particularly one of the things Michael said, that we should understand that divine intervention should not be a substitute, for our own effort or our own agency. We need to move forward. And as the ordinary African citizen, like what one of the commenters asked, how do we right the wrong? And Prof already alluded to, we need to seek the truth. We need to seek knowledge, and we need also to be tolerant to all other. We need to bring all majorities and minorities of religious organized bodies on board to be able to help Africa develop as it is. Thank you very much. I am Evans Apia Kisi. This has been SEPSA Talk. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.